basically devoid of boundaries, rather this kind of infinite melting together with whatever the object of love is. So I found something that may touch upon that in some way, but maybe it's even not necessary to approach it from such an like direct way. But still, I think it could be something that's necessary to just reflect on, because I think anyone who is on the journey of trying to find oneself, trying to become one with oneself, and coming into contact with guides or with different traditions, different teachings, there is always that risk of losing oneself to different forces, whatever they may be. And I'm not saying all of them are bad, but some of them for sure may not always be good. So for me personally, at least, it's been an important thing to come back to and think like, what are the actual frames within which I want to live and experiment? Because I think spiritual life is to some degree an experiment, at least if you don't choose to go a very orthodox way. So I don't know, do you want me to start with reading this penning that I found?
Sure. And maybe we can use this penning as a means to pen.
Exactly.
Okay.
And yeah, like I said, it's not very much about discipline or anything like that. I was looking through my Rumi and my Hafiz, but I found something by Hafiz that I thought maybe worth pondering.
Is that my missing book?
Maybe.
That's the same one.
Can you, by the way, I have like super cheap headphones. Can you hear what I'm saying? Like, is it clear? Okay. So this one is called Integrity. Few have the strength to be a real hero, that rare man or woman who always keeps their word. Few have the strength to be a real hero, that rare man or woman who always keeps their word. Even an angel needs rest. Integrity creates a body so vast, 1,000 winged ones will plead, may I lay my cheek against you. Integrity creates a body so vast, 1,000 winged ones will plead, may I lay my cheek against you.
That's all Hafiz is telling us. Serious stuff. Can you read that again without the repetition?
Yeah. Few have the strength to be a real hero, that rare man or woman who always keeps their word. Even an angel needs rest. Integrity creates a body so vast, 1,000 winged ones will plead, may I lay my cheek against you.
So we'll give it 10 minutes. So whoever is ready to share their penning, we can do so. And begin. So who's ready?
Having it. If my cheek could be, if my cheek could be a bed of earth, safe, luscious, evergreen, and blue and earth, please lay your cheek to rest. But I am an earth of flowers and grass, of rosemary, Indian jasmine, but mercury and serpent too, a scorpion bite to make you dance before I, not I, in a trance. And you may settle to grow weeds and hide those blushing bleeding, to spoil jasmines, to spoil before the sun burns their fins. Lay not on my cheek of earth, for in closeness constant there is no birth, though you are welcome to take, and I may hurt, for wanting you to lay, though silent I deter you from uncovering, unearthing as I search. Perhaps from my garden I too will run, unless your absence, without distraction, without substance, my words will take form. All my blades, my hills and valley, won't thirst and be speaking letters. Intentions will not without trespassers, impostors, and thieves. A big sign that states danger, do not enter. Red ink with pen, can't be blood. Echo shall rain from the sky as a cheek of earth as these feet may wash away me.
I'll try to wrap it up fast.
You may have it written on the computer because it was cutting at some point. It would be really nice to see the whole thing. Nice.
Mehtab, Mariam.
I have written sort of one big poem, but only one part of it is making sense right now. I have been a Satan and a victim. Satan in my rise and ride, victim in my crushed pride. That's it.
Was this like the part that made sense, or was this the whole thing?
I think it made more sense. Yeah, should I say it again?
I would like. Did you have more?
It's a whole story in it.
Yeah, go for it.
But I have not made an end in it. I will share in the group, inshallah. But it's still here right now. I think it's making sense to hear from me. Thank you.
Maybe we're overestimating making sense. I don't know. Mariam, do you have something you want to share? Or Alicia?
Yes, I think I'm ready. It was really difficult. Can you hear me? Hello?
We hear you, yeah.
Oh, great. You can hear me, right? All right. How I wish to be one, like the hero she was. Embrace hardships with the arms of love, for the sake of love. The thousand-winged one says, we brought love from love. This is just the few until we reach and meet the hero.
Mariam, could you repeat the last two lines?
Yeah, yes. This is just the few until we reach and meet the hero.
You want to share, Alicia?
Sure. What meant sir? Sir in the Arabic language is secret. What meant sir, the most hidden akhfa, sir al-sir. Was the secret between us, no boundaries between us. We are one, I grant none privy to our secret, to the secret. Gabriel's ascent escorted the beloved, beyond the lote tree, none privy. Beyond the lote tree, none privy, to the secret most holy. How dare one assumes to release this mystery? How dare one assumes to release this mystery, macrocosmic between Mim Ha Mim Dal, microcosmic, the secret between us. What's the difference, beloved? What's the difference? Empty, pure silence, just you and I. We are a glimpse into the world of mystery where secrecy is mandatory. For those who wish to unveil this mystery, take leave. For those who wish to unveil this mystery, take leave. The door's over there. Take leave with Gabriel. He shall escort your descent while others ascend. Like a divine play, all that we are. Puppets, characters, and role play. Bring not your codes of do's and don'ts into this arena, as scripture too shall play her role of mute awareness. Abolish your idols of the values you worship, for Layla is Layla, both book and prophet. Take my sandals, for I am impure, perchance they be a witness of my greatest secret. I ask to be veiled even here, in case you see me not, in case you feel me not, in case you finally realize the secret of us is but you with you. Sadaqallahu al-Azim. Louisa, you can grace us with your outpourings.
Only if you have time. What is it to be true to my word, and yet to be flexible in the face of truth? Can I claim to know what's true? Can I claim to own the truth, embody truth? Integrity? To disintegrate, is that the opposite? And how can I love with integrity when all I ever knew was to disintegrate, to dissolve? Like a slave under the master of love. Any rule, any principle thrown under the bus for love. A criminal for love, a traitor for love. Call me any name and I will be that. Is this emancipation always tinted with shame and guilt? Is there no freedom from duality, even in spirituality? The middle road so thin, I walk on glass and slipping, I bleed, cut myself, and you. Nisargadatta Maharaj said, let your human nature unfold and rest in knowing that I am. Why do I try to make this earthly vessel crystalline? An alchemy that seems so futile in the face of fleshly sin. Yet, dichotomy of heaven and hell, heaven and earth don't appeal to me. Surely as above, so below. Whatever good I can expect of me is not in the hereafter, but to be realized now. Can I be so bold to strive for sainthood, knowing that striving in itself is the beam in my eye? knowing that striving in itself is the beam in my eye? Can I be so bold to strive for sainthood, knowing that striving in itself is the beam in my eye? You know, this parable of someone pointing out the stick in his brother's eye, and then he himself has a beam in his eye. It's a biblical parable. So it's like you're very quick to blame others for being faulty, but then you yourself, you know, cannot see straight because you see the stick, but you don't see that you have a beam in your eye. So
Sort of like the glass house effect.
yeah, basically.
Sort of
Maybe
what Imam Busayri said. I command others towards the prayer, but I am lacking. The glass house effect, it's like you have a house that is visible and you're pointing your fingers, you know, at other homes and other people. We have our own chaos going on here within the glass house.
there's also the, you know, saying of don't throw rocks in a glass house, like don't, you know, act too big when everything that you're kind of doing is anyways bound to kind of crumble on yourself when you're making all these big words and stuff.
So now transitioning into boundaries. Are we prepared to ice skate on the topic?
Sure. Walk on glass.
Solomon's palace had glass floors. Rather be there.
Do you think it was ice?
I think it was glass.
It was glass. Yeah, she thought it was.
Maybe ice glass.
Unless he was rushing. But yeah.
But I don't know if integrity and boundaries are very different. I mean, I think having integrity is having boundaries. I don't know though if they have to be so strictly laid out, but I think someone with integrity is usually someone who doesn't swerve from their core. Again, I'm not the right person to speak on these matters. I'm more here to learn because I feel like it's a very, like I said, I never was someone who knew boundaries, so.
Do you see yourself in the same sort of, you said, I was never someone who knew boundaries. Do you see yourself different from that or still in that no boundary loop?
I think there's two routes to go, and one is kind of to always have the benefit of a doubt in existence in itself and kind of throw oneself into the abyss of just eternal space, and the other route is to confine reality into different tangible or perceivable spaces that one can inhabit with peace and harmony. I think to live in that infinite vastness is requiring an extreme dissolution of self, and I don't know if that's always harmonious. I can't say an answer to your question more than that.
If we were all to share in a sentence or a word, what comes to mind when, you know, the term boundary is presented spontaneously?
Comfort,
Okay.
says Mariam.
I thought of a red line. The red line. Like I feel like when it comes to integrity, it's also a concept I'm trying to understand. But you know how we tend to, at least, and I see it to myself and many people, we rise to people to defend people more than we defend ourselves. I mean, if you see something happening and it's wrong, if it happens to you, you might say it's okay, but if you see someone else, for me, that's part of building your integrity, knowing what are these things that make you like. It's a line. Like if you cross it, I'm not okay. You know something from within you will just stand up. Again, it's not even. These are the boundaries.
There was a thing that I read in, I don't know, international relations class or what. They were talking about this revolution, and so there was a man. He was just, just playing with the stick. So he was talking about that the revolution has come. So that stick just hit another person. He said, "This is where you're, from where you it was fine. From where your stick has hit me, this is where your independence." So that left a very big impact. So I mean, the boundary is something that neither become is a comfort zone for yourself, but nor does it hamper other person's space as well. So it's like a harmony. It has to be harmonious at the same time. Yeah. This is such a tough topic.
What comes to your mind?
Safety. Safety for myself, safety for the other. Or something you want to protect. Non-obligation. You're not obliged to let everyone into your private space or your personal space. So a sense of being unapologetic without feeling guilty.
For setting boundaries or what?
For setting boundaries.
So that sounds a bit like what Mariam wrote. No one can cross until eligible.
You just reminded me of the concept of previous, I know this was, I guess, yeah, it was very common in the Mughal Empire, where they would always have a Divan-e-Am and Divan-e-Khas. So that was like boundaries, right? There was the court or the assembly for, a public sort of disclosure between the ruler and and the subjects, and then you had the Divan Khas, the inner circle. And the level of boundaries in that would be obviously different. So boundaries to me is like sacred space. There has to be a protocol to enter into sacred space. And there is a differentiation because while others were asked to remove their sandals, that one was asked not to. So, yeah, so there is biases and boundaries too. It's because who you choose to feel safe with or allow into the temple within, you know, or close to it. And I guess anyone who enters, then what is there to kind of, I don't know, like, are there levels to that too, as to what you veil and unveil, or is it too late? Is it like a checkmate? You know? Is there anything you can hide once the entry has happened?
Are you saying like once you let someone into the temple, it's like whether they start wrecking stuff or like throwing things around, it's like you've already let them in? Or
no, I mean, it's like whoever has entered, they've entered because of a metaphysical entry. And so if they have entered, then what is there to kind of, what is, I guess it's the idea of veils. Like, you know, there'll be some who are fully unveiled with another, whereas there's still going to be veils even though you're within the temple. So the point is, are there boundaries within the temple too? And I think there is.
It reminds me of a Rumi poem when he says, even if there are thieves, even if you steal from me, I'm still receiving. Something like that.
I'm still?
He's still receiving, like he's still, and he still has that connection. So even if people perhaps, I mean, want to put boundaries and they cross the boundaries and then they start to take away things, I don't know what it means, but that just reminds me of a poem.
It's like when you talk about knowledge. So Imam Ali says that you can steal everything, but nobody can steal the knowledge. And he's probably talking about this metaphysical knowledge or the God-gifted knowledge that man is given. That will, who can intrude that knowledge, if we speak from a metaphysical perspective, is the satanic whispers or the ego self or the spiritual ego. Then that is where the corruption and at the same time your own soul coming to fight in that place to either build the shelter or further demolish. It becomes the space of conflict, and then whatever the soul does in overcoming it, that also can turn into a fortress.
So in your experience, do you feel boundaries are something you know or something you learn?
Right now, I think it's something we learn. when we talked about this place of, and when we were talking about the sacred space, it's like you living in a space, and then and also people who are artists. Not all artists want to reveal all of their works. There will be certain sacred works, and we know about the right artists, their stuff was found after their death. They're not revealing those things. So I think probably that was their sacred stuff. That was a conversation between them and the works that they were able to procure. So I think that this sacredness, the concept of sacredness, does come with boundaries and is a process. Sometimes people are ready to, after some alchemy or revolution, they are able to put things out, and some are not. So I think it's a process given that inference.
I think it's similar to the idea of the different stations of the saints. Not all of them are on par, right? There's different levels and stations, and what one knows, the other doesn't necessarily know. And eligibility is not something we can decide. What's the rubric, and what are the factors that is the goal to remove all boundaries eventually? Is it with all, or is it with yourself that you see in the other? That experience is, I think, necessary in the path. And if you have that experience and that's why the Sufis and the mystics, they have the spiritual guides to assimilate or to experience that sort of coming forth and just sort of unveiling yourself, and that transparency and vulnerability of be as you are kind of thing with the guide. But can you be that with everyone else? So you can't, and therefore you have to have boundaries, because then you just, otherwise there's desecration of the sacred space. It could become unhealthy, imbalanced, toxic when you don't have boundaries. Because, again, but relating it to spirituality, the secret cannot be unveiled to the one who's unworthy or who's not prepared. And that's one of the major protocols of sacred knowledge. You don't go around flaunting it, you don't go around sharing it, because there's a high level of rejection and just not understanding, and that's like a desecration to the truth contained in the knowledge, and then you become a vessel to desecrate it. So yeah, boundaries are necessary.
And then what is the seeker's responsibility? Because there are so many who are, very ready to present themselves as, mighty authorities. And I think not every entity, not every power is what we want to be fully unveiled to. You're talking about different levels of the sacred space. So who is it that we actually can surrender so fully to that we have no boundaries? That would be an entity or power that would be fully benevolent, as far as I can see. Or we just take the attitude of Rumi's, you can steal and I still receive. That's the other perspective. But then what's the use of boundaries? Because then we're just happy when there's a robbery.
Yeah, I'm also facing a similar kind of dilemma. I have recently placed the picture of our guide in the room, because I was specifically place. And it has been hard for my family members to accept this, but I know the kind of, there's peace, and you're under which sort of thing that is coming. But at the same time, Saida Alicia has said that we can't put everything out, because we don't want that to become a symbol of criticism. So that is something that I'm also struggling with, but I'm also seeking positive results. So this is where I am setting my boundary, that this has to be here, or don't accept it. This is not going to be taken off. This is where I've drawn the line. But it sometimes it doesn't. It just hurts when when they're saying like, why do you have it right here, or this is this or that. I'm like, no, I know what it's doing for me. So this
And
is
in that space that you're placing it, are you the owner of that space?
this is my room.
Oh,
This right
in
here.
your room. Oh, in your room. Okay, I thought you meant like in a common area, and you're like
No way.
adamant. Okay, because I was like, it's not even about criticism, because everything you do will be criticized. It's just about sometimes disrespect, or a desecration to the knowledge. So, or to whatever it is. Yeah. So, okay, I get that. It's in your space. So yeah, I think that's, if you were to let go of that, even, then what do you have really? So I get that. And if you don't set boundaries, then you're going to be, situation where like the army of elephants will come and want to take over, just trample you, down, basically. So, and I think it comes with awareness. As we become familiar with ourselves, and as we expand and grow, we're not, I think it's over time. Like, I think I probably have, I wasn't ever like the best in boundaries either. I used to just be like an open book everywhere and just be very fluid, and I get myself into a lot of trouble with that sort of open heart, open whatever attitude, and and sometimes it can backfire, but not to a point where I think I would ever regret it. But I think it's important, because if for example, even in the 8 limbs of yoga, right? They talk about not stealing. It's not literally about stealing from someone. It's even stealing someone's time. And so you have to have boundaries. Like, if I want to send a voice note to someone, I could say it in this amount of time, and I take an hour to say it. I've crossed the threshold, because what if that person is busy and they're polite to tell me, polite not to tell me? I mean, am I entitled to take up an hour of their time? So I have to have my own self-respect, and then respect someone else. So boundaries are essential.
And what's whose responsibility then? Because also equally the receiver has the responsibility to set their boundaries and maybe not listen to an hour-long message if they don't have the time. And this I find is very, especially in spiritual relationships between teacher and student, it's tricky, because if the student is serious, then usually that means a relinquishing of boundaries. That's how, as far as the tradition has gone, like pretty much you have to just trust, and you have to kind of let go of your ego. You have to let go of the comfort. That's a word that came up a lot now with the boundaries. And that means the teacher's responsibility is huge. And if the teacher then does the 1 hour voice note thing, then that's kind of as a student, you don't put that boundary. So I think that is a dilemma.
But then if you're the student and you're going to start critiquing everything that the guide is doing, obviously when things, I think, things get noticeably out of hand and questionable, but who is to say? It's like you're going to a doctor and they're prescribing penicillin and you're like, well, she could have given me a Panadol or a Tylenol. Like, why are you going to the doctor?
But see, this is the thing. I mean, I come from
Who are
a background where
you to
I've
start
lived in
telling
a sect.
her 1 hour is too much?
And there comes a point when you don't have any boundaries and you're literally, you know, basically down with anything. Like if someone asks you to, you know, get on all fours and, you know, you get beat with a stick, you're like, this is the master's wish. That didn't happen to me, but I'm just saying like that's basically you lose all sense of boundaries. So I think that is that's a tricky road also to say that, you know, who are you to critique, because at what point do you then, when are things so out of hand that you actually have the right to say this is too much? Because for what, you know, all I know is the attitude you have determines what outcome you get. So the Zen master who actually does beat his student with a stick, that's all for spiritual development. And, you know, if the student does rid himself or herself of the construct of, you know, physical abuse is wrong, then for all I know, there might be that result. There's many stories of students who, you know, got enlightened at the whip of their master. Still, people could argue that's abuse. So I think it's a very, yeah, it's a shady subject.
Yeah, it's a fine line. And it's like, what determines that red line that May was speaking? And we went on a live once with Dr. Khalid Abu Fadl, where he basically talked about spiritual abuse. So to say that, you know, I sat in a sohbah for 3 hours and that's just too much for me, that's spiritual abuse, or comparing that with I went into the presence of the master and he asked me to give all my wealth. I think there's a huge difference, right? So I think it depends.
But who determines that difference? Because again, for someone, giving all your wealth is no sacrifice. Is that then still abusive? And by whose norms do we follow? Because if we're talking about mysticism, and I mean the Sufis, the tantric yogis, the Taoists, like these are crazy people. These are people who don't care about like society's norms. So like talk to them about, you know, giving your wealth away and they'll be like, yeah, well, it wasn't much to me anyways. And you know, my body isn't much to me anyways. So where do we draw the line if not in the heart? And then that for someone might mean, you know, someone steps on your toes and you're like very offended. For someone
Hence
else,
the
it's
Aga
like,
Khan.
what's that?
Look him up.
It's a person?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it's tricky because when there is emphasis on fana fi, you know, fana in the guide, you know, what determines being taken advantage of, and what isn't? Because there are so many ways of training, and you can find that in, you know, historical books and narrations as to, you know, crazy sort of stuff that you would have to do. So I don't know. I don't have an answer for that. I haven't been sort of, I don't know. They have their own way of dealing with everyone individually. It's sort of like a bespoke situation, customized spirituality. It's not a one size fits all. It's never been for me. So it's, I guess the topic is just very subjective. But I think generally speaking, when we're speaking about the guides, and if it feels right, but then, I don't know, maybe that can be critiqued, but
Does killing the ego feel nice? Does getting your bad habits uprooted feel nice? Does getting your, bad personality traits critiqued feel nice? Not usually, but you may get something
maybe
out
not
of
in
it.
the process, but after.
Again, where is the end? I'm really curious to know, because especially I feel as women, we are conditioned to love unconditionally. We're conditioned to love anyone. And even though the person may be behaving in whatever way, there is this sentiment of the unconditional love being a healing power. And that's why people stay in abusive relationships, because they think someone will change. If I just love more, they will heal. I've seen this so much in my life happening. So, yeah. I just want to hear what you think also.
There's a lot of us here. What do you mean, you think?
All.
You all. Just say
Yes.
that then.
Y'all. I want to hear what y'all think.
Okay, if we take this topic into the context of toxic relationships, there are too many. I mean, this earth is filled with so many toxic relationships that every day we get to hear things, and like people are in toxic relationships. And even yesterday I was discussing with someone how the relationships are, and so many examples popping out that there was someone who had tried to attempt suicide because she found out that the guy was cheating on someone, and so many things like that. This guy Steve Harvey, I'm not really promoting him, but really his content is good. He says that women, they exactly like you said, that women are expected of the unconditional love because of so many years of investment that women and or they don't get out of the relationships, so they have things outside of it, and then they're living with circumstances because they're not setting boundaries, and because there's uncertainty to move out of those things, they are bearing with those conditions, and most of them just die in that same situation, because they have not set out their boundaries out of fear. The topic of relationship is, I think it's very difficult.
I think it's good to give the benefit of the doubt, but then when there's a pattern that they question, I think this is in relationships, and the way they ask you a question, like sometimes you start to the intention behind their question, and like the intention. It's important not to engage in conversation. I think a big part of boundaries is to know, and that's what is hard for us as women to do. Like, no, I don't want to talk about this, because I think abuse starts with like you start to see the reason the person's just asking you the question, which is what they do when they question you in interrogation rooms. So you so you doubt yourself. So I feel whenever you're in a situation where there's no clarity, even maybe with your spiritual guide, you have to take a step back to think about your intention and why are you here? What are you doing it for? Is it benefiting you? Even especially if it's a spiritual guide is intimate, so it's very important. But I mean, even in even with family, even with anyone, like, yeah, and you just start to know, like, do I want to even ask how are you? Like, do I want to go into that that whole conversation? What do I have?
and I think the nice thing about a spiritual guide, it's really hard because you have to do a lot of, yani, you're right, it's not easy to uproot all of your bad habits and to see yourself, and I have the same question, like when is the end, you know? But but there's it's like you know, when you hit the rug, you're just trying to get the dust. So you always have to remember that, you know, yani. And everybody has different capacities. Maybe some of us will end up being physically abused. Maybe some of us, you know, will yani, it's and I guess boundaries is coming back to yourself and understanding, like, you are I'm not there, like I'm not dissociated from my ego. So I always think about me as a person. What are the things that I'm always leaning towards in my 30 years? Like, I'm trying to understand me, because I'm sure with a spiritual guide, it's not going to take me away from things that feel natural. Maybe not, like, maybe I'm wrong, but yani, things that feel natural to that feel, not the things that I've learned, I've been conditioned to believe are good, but things that let me go of that conditioning and kind of make me lean into who I am. And sometimes it's a trick. Like, no, it's not it. We were tricking, you know. And you just, and that's and I think the thief and like people, I do a lot of things where I don't know how to put boundaries, but then it teaches you humility, you know, yani, in a like, you fell again, you know, you fell again. You're not gonna have humility just because we're people, like we have pride. So it's pride isn't gonna go by just you not falling down on your face and you figuring out, you know, and the shit, like my pride is taking the best of I'm nothing. So I feel the boundary starts with going in back into your space and trying to make sense, like, before losing yourself. Like Anna, for me, like I've been through it's scary, yani, at least your spiritual guide, you come back to them, but it's scary when that happens with abusive people. Like, you lose yourself and then you find yourself, yani, yeah, like ridicule, yani, in an abusive situation, really, you know. And I totally believe once you let someone in, it's so hard to kick them out, especially when it comes to relationships, yani. It's really difficult for them to, and I'm still learning, but
I think also the experience of you know, that sort of like boundaries are necessary. You can't come to that sort of conclusion unless you've experienced the polar opposite, unless you have been intruded, or you know, if your boundaries have been crossed, because in order to have boundaries, you need to understand what it feels like to not have boundaries. So when that experience happens, then I think it's equally part of the spiritual journey to be able to experience. I remember there was someone who came to me like a few years ago, and I had to do some shadow work with them. And I remember they said that their previous spiritual guide was just, according to them, you know, fully abusing them, not like sexually or physically or anything like that, but on other levels, and fully manipulated that person. And then, you know, where they were brought to next, they just had to experience unconditional love. But then had they began with the unconditional love journey, they would probably not appreciate it, maybe, or maybe they weren't ready for that, because they hadn't experienced the flip side of what that actually is. And then later they, you know, they're on, and maybe that guide has a specific role, and then they move on. So there are spiritual guides who have volunteered to do the dirty work, and they're known to be the dirty guides. I don't know, like, I'm not like high-fiving them, but everybody has a role. That's all I'm saying. So if we have a paradigm that everything is necessary and equally good for us, in the training, okay, then no regret. No regret, I think. Because we are what we are today, and we are where we are today because of yesterday.
Mariam, do you have any 2 cents?
Do you have any gold dinars?
So we can say that boundaries is not an end, it's a process, ongoing process.
I guess it's some sort of process of determining who we are. And I think Alicia is setting a boundary here.
Flexible
I
boundary.
actually went over. I went over the half an hour, but I didn't give any specifics. So I basically now I'm coming to 1.5 hours. So which is the usual anyways. But I mean, you guys can continue. I'm not saying, I'm not imposing my situation on others. Entirely up to you all. But I'll stay for what Mariam has to say.
All right. I think, 1.5 is a quite good time. That's anyways what we used to mention. And speaking of stealing people's time, I think that's also a good adab to keep. Not saying that we can't continue in the chat.
Sure. I think this is a deep topic, and it's very relevant to why we express poetically, because different states are probably due to, boundaries being sometimes triggered, or whatever. I think it's relevant. So we can continue this. I have some graphics that I'd like to share on the group that I had found on the internet, and I thought they were relevant infographics for boundaries that I'm sure any one of you would have found anyways by using the Google boundary. So yeah, so we'll, I guess, close it off for now, and we shall resume next month. I'm trying to get Sayyid Salman Chishti. He was in the Khalwa, and then he's responded back to me. But once I get on a call or talk with him, I'll see if we can get him for next month on any topic that he'd like to share. Ideally, it was Khalwa, but doesn't have to be.
Very nice.
Yeah.
Thank you everyone so much for your presence today. Blessing.
Thank you, everyone. So until next time, thank you. Assalamu alaikum.